Hey, everyone. So you've sent in a ton of articles about U.S. aid to Ukraine
Yeah,
and how it's all mixed up with this whole impeachment thing,
right.
both past and present impeachments.
Exactly.
So we're going to take a deep dive into all the major players and controversies
Oh,
and
absolutely.
try to figure out what it all means for the future. And
Show a lot.
I think as we kind of unpack all
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
you might be surprised by just how connected all these events really are.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So,
We've got the current House impeachment inquiry going on with President Biden,
right.
which is mainly focused on his son Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine.
Yeah, with that energy company.
Yeah, with Burisma.
Burisma, right?
Right. And then
Sure.
we've got the impeachments of former President Trump,
Right.
especially the one back in 2019 tied to Ukraine aid.
Yeah.
And we've got to think about how that might impact how the U.S. supports Ukraine moving forward.
Yeah, and one thing that really stood out to me from these articles you sent is just how divided everybody is over foreign aid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It seems like some Republicans are really skeptical
Mm-hmm.
of giving money to Ukraine,
That's right.
and some Democrats are totally for it.
Yeah, you see that split?
There's even an article here that mentions
Ah.
an FBI informant report
Yeah.
about a Burisma executive
Mm.
allegedly offering a $5 million bribe.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Now, we don't know
Right.
if that's true or not,
Yeah, it's unverified.
but it definitely adds to the
No,
drama.
it definitely adds fuel to the fire,
I know.
considering how important that U.S. aid has been for
Yeah,
Ukraine
right.
in the whole conflict with Russia.
Okay, so let's start with these impeachment allegations against President Biden.
Okay.
What are they really accusing him of here?
Well, it all comes down to Hunter Biden's role on the board of Burisma
Okay.
from 2014 to 2019.
Right.
And that overlapped with his father's time as vice president.
Right, when he was heavily involved.
Exactly when Joe Biden was deeply involved in U.S. policy towards Ukraine.
Right.
Critics argue that Hunter Biden's position, which came with a pretty big salary,
Yeah?
was only because of his dad's influence,
Right.
and that Joe Biden used his power to protect Burisma from corruption investigations.
Ah, so that's where this whole thing with Viktor Shokin comes in.
Yes, exactly.
The Ukrainian prosecutor general.
Right.
Right.
Shokin was leading an investigation into Burisma,
Okay.
and the allegation is that Joe Biden pressured Ukraine
To get rid of him.
to remove him from office
Yeah.
to protect his son in the company.
But the articles also say that
Yeah.
Shokin was considered corrupt himself.
That's right.
There was
There was pressure from the European Union and the International Monetary Fund
to remove him.
to remove him because they thought he wasn't effective.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Shokin's removal wasn't just because of Joe Biden.
Right.
There were a lot of international concerns about how he was doing things.
Okay.
And to be clear, there's no evidence that directly links Joe Biden's actions to protecting Burisma
Okay.
or Hunter Biden.
So it's more complicated than just saying
Right.
Biden got rid of the prosecutor to protect his son.
Exactly.
There were other things going on.
There were multiple factors.
But there are still those other accusations
Yes.
about corruption,
Yes.
influence peddling.
Right.
The articles mention
Mhm.
testimonies from Hunter Biden's former business associates
Yes.
and information that was supposedly on his laptop.
Uh-huh.
What's the deal with that?
So that's what's really fueling this impeachment inquiry.
Okay.
Republicans are saying that the stuff on the laptop
Yeah.
and these testimonies show a pattern of shady dealings
Okay.
by Hunter Biden and possibly his father,
Okay.
and not just in Ukraine, but in other countries too.
So they're pushing this narrative.
They're saying Joe Biden was either directly involved
Okay.
or at least knew about plans to make money from his political position.
Wow. So that raises the big question.
Yeah.
Is there any real evidence
That's the million-dollar question.
that connects Joe Biden to any actual wrongdoing?
Right, and that's what everyone's trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Despite months of investigation,
Yeah.
including subpoenas and public hearings.
Led by the House Republicans?
Yeah, led by House Republicans.
Right.
They haven't found anything solid.
Mm.
They haven't been able to prove that
Yeah.
Joe Biden personally benefited from
Right.
or helped with any corrupt activities in Ukraine.
So
It's still ongoing.
still a lot up in the air.
There's a lot to uncover yet.
Yeah. So even with all this going on with the impeachment inquiry,
Yeah.
they haven't actually found anything concrete yet.
Not yet, no.
It makes you wonder how much of this is really about wrongdoing
Yeah.
and how much is just political maneuvering.
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure.
I guess we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about what's happening now with President Biden,
Right.
but you mentioned before how Trump's impeachments could affect future aid to Ukraine.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that.
Uh-huh.
Can you remind me what exactly happened with that first impeachment in 2019?
Oh, sure.
The one that was directly related to Ukraine?
Yeah, so basically
Yeah.
Trump was accused of holding back almost $400 million in military aid that Congress had already approved for Ukraine.
Right.
And they were saying he did this to pressure Ukraine's president
Right. To get him
to launch an investigation into Joe Biden and his son, Hunter.
Yeah, I remember that being a huge deal.
It was
It
massive.
felt like that whole thing really blew up the whole debate about foreign aid.
Oh, absolutely. It really intensified those divisions.
And you can see those divisions playing out right now
Yeah,
in the arguments about how much aid to send to Ukraine,
right.
and even if we should be sending any aid at all.
Exactly. And you have some very prominent Republicans like Senators Rand Paul and Josh Hawley.
Yeah, they've been pretty vocal
Very outspoken.
about scaling back aid to Ukraine.
They're saying we should be focusing on problems here at home.
Right. Their argument is,
Instead of spending billions of dollars overseas.
right, why are we sending money over there
Exactly.
when we have issues here?
Yeah, that's one side of the argument.
Right.
But then you have many Democrats who believe that aid to Ukraine is crucial.
Right. And they say it's not just about helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia.
Right. It's about more than that.
It's about supporting democracy,
Exactly.
containing Russian aggression,
Right.
and upholding America's commitments to its allies.
It's a much broader perspective.
So it sounds like it goes beyond just disagreeing about money.
It's much deeper than that.
It's like a totally different way of looking at the world.
You're absolutely right. It's a fundamental difference in worldview.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Trump's actions and that whole impeachment thing
Uh,
raised some serious concerns about whether the U.S. can be trusted to keep its promises to its allies.
Definitely. It really undermined the credibility of U.S. commitments.
Because if foreign aid can be used as a bargaining chip
Right.
in political games,
Exactly.
then other countries can't really rely on the U.S.
It creates a lot of uncertainty.
Right. Like, why would another country depend on us for support
Right.
if they think it could all disappear because of some fight in Washington?
Yeah, it makes it hard to build trust.
So how does all of this affect Ukraine specifically?
Well, for Ukraine, it creates a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
They depend on the U.S. for support to defend themselves against Russia,
Right.
but they also know that that support might not always be there.
So they're in this uncertain position.
Exactly. It makes planning for the future very challenging.
What do you think would happen if a more Trump-aligned
Hmm.
Republican majority Congress came into power?
Well, it's unlikely that all aid would be completely cut off,
Okay.
but I think we could see some big changes.
Like what?
For example, a more skeptical Congress might put stricter conditions on how the aid money can be used.
Okay.
There could be more oversight,
Right.
more demands for accountability.
Which could slow things down.
So even if the money's still there,
Right.
it could be a lot harder for Ukraine to actually get it.
Exactly. There could be more roadblocks and hurdles.
And that could really hurt their ability to defend themselves.
Yeah. And to rebuild after the war.
It's a lot to deal with.
Definitely.
Is there anything else we should be looking at?
Yes.
Yeah.
One more thing to think about is this push for more transparency and accountability in foreign aid.
On the surface, that sounds like a good thing.
It does.
Who wouldn't want more accountability when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars?
Exactly. In theory, it's a great idea.
Yeah, we need to make sure the money isn't wasted or
Right.
ending up in the wrong hands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this focus on accountability can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
What do you mean?
Well, while it can lead to real improvements
Yeah,
in how aid programs are run,
right.
it can also be used for political purposes.
So instead of help.
It can become another way to score political points. So we need to look closely at who's pushing for this accountability
Exactly.
and why are they doing it.
What are their real motivations?
Are they actually trying to improve things?
Right.
Or are they just trying to create problems?
It's crucial to think critically
Yeah.
and look beyond the surface to
Yeah.
understand the bigger picture.
So it sounds like we really need to keep an eye on how this accountability thing plays out.
Yeah.
It could be a good thing, but it could also create even more problems for Ukraine.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for everyone to stay informed.
Right. Not just the politicians, but like everyday people too.
Exactly. We all need to understand these issues and be
Yeah.
able to see through the political spin.
Okay, so what can we as regular people actually do?
Well,
I mean, it's not like we're the ones making these decisions.
you're right, but we can still have an impact.
Yeah.
We can start by educating ourselves
Okay.
about these complicated topics, and then we can talk about them.
Yeah, have discussions with.
Yeah. with our friends and
No,
family.
communities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can contact our elected officials
Right.
and let them know what we think about U.S. aid to Ukraine.
So basically, we need to stay informed,
Right.
speak up, and support the people who are making a difference.
Exactly. It's not about being a foreign policy expert.
Right.
It's about being engaged citizens
Yeah.
who care about what's happening in the world.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we've learned in this deep dive.
Okay.
We started by looking at the impeachment inquiry into President Biden.
Uh-huh.
And so far, they haven't found any real evidence that he did anything wrong.
Right. But the investigation is still going on.
Yeah, and it's definitely adding to the political divide in Washington.
Oh, absolutely.
And that division is playing out in a big way when it comes to aid to Ukraine.
That's right.
We talked about how Trump's impeachments,
Yeah.
especially the one related to withholding aid in 2019,
Right.
have created a lot of doubt about U.S. foreign policy.
They've raised questions about whether the U.S. can be trusted to keep its promises.
And that's made things really uncertain for Ukraine.
Exactly.
They don't know what to expect in terms of future support.
It's a tough position for them.
Yeah. And we talked about how things could change
Mm-hmm.
if there's a more Trump-aligned Republican majority in Congress.
Right. There could be less money,
Yeah.
more conditions,
More oversight.
or delays.
All of which would make it harder for Ukraine to get the help they need.
And we can't forget about that push for increased accountability.
Right.
It's a good idea in theory,
Yeah.
but it can also be used for political gain.
So we need to be careful.
We need to pay attention to who's pushing for it
And why?
and what their real motives are.
That's a lot to think about.
It is, but I think the key takeaway here
Yeah.
is that we all need to stay informed
Stay engaged.
and make our voices heard.
We can't just sit back and hope for the best.
We need to be active participants in shaping the future.
All said.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah. From impeachment to foreign aid to the future of U.S.-Ukraine relations.
It's been a real deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll keep following these developments, and we encourage you to do the same.
Keep learning
Keep asking questions.
and keep speaking up.
Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.